Today, we are joined by Raj Prek, who is our SVP of Business Development, and James Bowie, who is our VP of Product Integrations. And I'm going to go ahead and throw it over to them.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for joining the training today. We're really excited about this 2.0 launch. It's been a long time coming, and we finally feel that it's ready for you guys. We have already had a number of clients that are on it on other integrated products. We're going to be, of course, demonstrating the integration in Encompass today and TPOC, so you guys can see that. I suspect that I know many of you that are on this training call. So I appreciate you guys taking the time and attending this webinar. James, our VP of Product Integrations, you probably know him as well. He works with your Encompass admins to set this up in your lower environments and now in your upper environment or your production environment. So here's what I'm going to cover today in the 2.0 training. One, we've made some changes to the front end, to the LoanNEX app. It handles more products now, HELOCs, closed-end seconds. So if you guys are offering those products, there's a much more elegant way that your sellers can enter in those closed-end seconds. We're going to, of course, we've stayed true to our core value proposition of still making it a very intuitive platform. And it's still very dynamic and responsive. So based on what the seller selects, income doc type or whatnot, there would be other fields that would pop into the LoanNEX app that are required. So all of those features are pretty much the same as they were in 1.0. They're just a little bit cleaner in 2.0. I'm also going to be showing you full lock management end-to-end from TPOC, and then the lock desk experience in Encompass, and some of the changes that are there. They're not really that aggressive of changes, but I think it's just a cleaner, simpler way for you guys to work in the platform. Of course, if you guys need to access our APIs, you can always reach out to James, and he can get you started for, if you guys want to do any API integrations. And then, of course, we've made a ton of enhancements on the back end, so the performance and the speed of the application itself is just much better. Okay, so next slide. So here's what I'm going to cover today. Of course, I talked about the LoanNEX app's second-lien navigation. We're going to cover that today. The pricing table enhancements. There's new ways that your sellers can filter in the pricing table, making it easier, look at products side by side, how they will request a lock, how they will request a lock modification. We've made some really great enhancements there. And then, of course, lock extensions. And then, of course, on the lock desk side, I'm also going to show you how you can approve those locks, approve those modifications and extensions, and a couple of other add-on features that we will be covering on the lock desk side. I'll also be covering lock settings, or our secondary settings, where you can set up things like your office hours or your lock desk hours in the system. So if a seller comes in when you're not available, or on a Saturday or Sunday when you're not accepting lock requests, custom messages can pop up to do that. We can also set extension policies on max number of extensions, max number of days allowed in extensions, and I'll cover all that as we go through. So without further ado, is there another slide that we need to cover here? Okay, so this is contact information. We'll put this up again at the very end, so you have everybody's contact information. The person that introduced me is our Director of Operations and Client Engagement, Brittany Diaz. Krista Ard is our account manager for client success, and she probably, if you have any support level issues, she's the one who responds to you. You guys also may know Nancy Carter, our VP of National Sales. We're all resources that are available to you as we transition you through 2.0. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm going to share my screen here. I'm going to go off video and share my screen. I'm going to start in the TPOC environment as a seller, registering a new loan and requesting a lock. So I'm going to log into our demo TPOC environment here. You guys are probably familiar with this. this is not the one I want. I want this one. And I'm going to log in as a seller. First thing I'm going to do, first thing it does is, of course, brings me to my pipeline, but I'm actually going to add a new loan and register that new loan. So I'm going to find my file here. Upload my 3.2 or 3.4, as you know. And then I'm going to make some changes here. I'm going to add the decisioning FICO. I'm going to change this to a detached single family. And I am going to register this loan. Once I register the loan, of course, it brings me into the loan summary, and I can then go directly to product and pricing, and it brings up LoanNEX. So you guys are familiar with this process. If you guys already on LoanNEX, here, sometimes. Okay. So this is the next app. You'll see that not much is different here. We didn't want to go too radical. We just wanted to make it easier to support some product types. All the information from the loan file ports over into the next app fields if they were completed in the loan file. The one that doesn't, of course, is the income doc type that they have to choose. You'll notice that there's a new drop down here called loan type where you can choose closed-end seconds. And if I do, it'll bring in my closed-end second amount and calculate the CLTV. Or if you guys have HELOC programs and they choose HELOC, then it'll bring in the HELOC drawn amount and the line amount and calculate the CLTV and the HCLTV for you and the combined loan amount. So those are the primary changes. We've also brought escrows up into the next app, giving us some more flexibility to tie LLPAs to escrow types. And of course, we have yes and waived and taxes only, insurance only. If you guys don't support some of these escrow types or waivers, then you can let our support team know, and we can trim down any of these drop downs for you. Just like we could trim down your income doc types here, or if you don't offer closed-end seconds or HELOCs, we could even trim the loan type down to just the first lien. We also brought in temporary buy downs. So if you offer temporary buy down programs, there's a new drop down here for temporary buy downs. But let me go through the workflow as a first lien, submitting this lock. I'll make this a 12-month bank statement loan. And I'll put in my DTI because I wasn't in the loan application. And I'm going to put in my month reserves and get price. Just like before, you also have the qualified price option here. And we put some callouts here so your sellers know exactly what information they need to put in here. The qualified price, of course, will calculate your DTI for you, or if you're doing a DSCR, this will become monthly rental income, property expenses, and reserves, and our system will calculate the DSCR for you, or for the seller. So if they fill in this information, it all still works the same way. We just put in some tooltips here so they know, hey, I need to put in the gross monthly income and not the annual income. So making it a little bit easier on your sellers. So I'm going to get price here. And as soon as I do, it brings me down to the programs that are available to me. You'll notice the pricing table is a little different, but different in a good way. Before, it would default to 30-year fixed, and if you wanted to see 40-year fixed, you'd click on 40-year fixed, and then you'd only see the 40-year fixed programs. Or if you wanted to see the 5-6 arms, then you'd have to click on that, and then you'd only see those programs. Now you can put these programs side by side and compare them and say, hey, I want to see the 5-6 arms, and you'll see right in the pricing table the 30-year fixed and the 5-6 arms are next to each other, so you can compare pricing. So cool little filtering options there. You can choose multiple different product types, and it will bring them into the view. You can also filter by fully amortized or interest only, or you could see both fully amortized and interest only all in one view. We default to fully amortized and interest only, so you'll see the 30-year fixed and the 30-year fixed IOs are next to each other. If I wanted to just see the amortized ones, it would trim it down and show me only the fully amortized products. I could also filter by lock period. We default to 30-day locks. But if you want to see the pricing for 45-day locks next to 30-day locks, you could choose as many as you want here, and you just see 30-day locks, 45-day locks right next to each other, so you can compare the pricing. All the other elements are pretty much the same. You can click on the rate and you'll see the full rate stack at the different lock periods. If you want to see the loan level pricing adjustments, you can click on the price and it will show you all the LLPA and the breakdown there. If you want to see the eligibility evidence, you can click on the eyeball just like you could in 1.0, and it'll show you all the boundaries of the loan programs and whether you passed or not, kind of like a mini AUS kind of view there. And of course, you can always download the guideline or the matrices that you guys have uploaded into the system for this loan program, or your seller can download them by clicking on this file icon. Okay, couple of things to note here. The eligibility Q&A is still part of the workflow here. In this particular instance, in this demo account, we've actually created a two-step process. Some of our clients, and you guys may be on the call now, have a two-step process. They're in wholesale. They actually want the seller to float the loan over to them or submit it for a pre-qual approval. If you have that two-step process, we could certainly enable that, where the loan can be floated over to your pre-qual desk. Your pre-qual desk can then satisfy an Encompass rule and then allow the seller to lock after they've reviewed the file. If you're in correspondent or delegated correspondent, you probably don't have that process and you have a single-step process of requesting a lock. We can support either the one-step or two-step process. And you can follow up with us if you want to enable that two-step process. I'm going to bypass that two-step process and just request this lock. And just like in 1.0, it brings you over to the eligibility Q&A or the seller to the eligibility Q&A, so they need to answer the questions that you have in eligibility Q&A. A little bit different this time, that when I click on save, it actually reprices the table. Eligibility Q&A can now be tied to LLPAs. So based on how they answer the question, if it impacts the price, it will reprice that loan and show any price adjustments in the pricing evidence here. So if there are any other adjustments based on how they answered the question. Just like before, the eligibility Q&A has a check mark. One different thing about eligibility Q&A in 2.0 is, let's say your seller goes through and answers some questions and they remembered, oh, I didn't answer that question correctly. They can go back into eligibility Q&A now and re-answer any of the questions, save it, and have a really kind of control over how what's happening in the eligibility Q&A. In 1.0, they'd have to reset the entire eligibility Q&A and answer all the questions again. Now they can go in and spot answer any question that they wrongly answered, and update the eligibility Q&A. So now I can request this lock. I'm going to request this lock at a 7.25. And of course, it brings up a submit lock screen, just like in 1.0. I don't know if you guys know this, but there are a lot of custom fields that you can add to your lock request pop-up screen right here. This is a demonstration of some that we've put in, and you can make them required or not required. But if you have any other fields besides this information, that is kind of the general information about the borrower and co-borrower and the property address, if there are other fields that you want your sellers to complete, let us know, and we can enable those custom fields for you. We can make them required or not required as a part of the process. Of course, there's always a comments box, so if the seller can write you a comment, and they can submit that lock request. Once they submit the lock request, they're brought to the lock request screen. As you'll see that it's now a little bit cleaner. There's a transaction summary that shows you what you locked at what price, who locked the loan, the borrower's information. You have the input details of the Nex app, what you actually put into the scenario Nex app are all detailed here. You could look at the pricing evidence again here. The eligibility evidence is here too. And it also shows you how you answered your Q&A questions in the initial lock request round. I locked this at a 45-day lock period, and it's in lock request status right now. So Now let's go into Encompass and actually approve this loan. So I'm going to switch personas, go into Encompass as a lock desk user, which I would suspect many of you guys are on this call. So let's go into Encompass. I'm going to get out of this loan first. You guys know that can't access this loan. Okay. Encompass. Okay, now that I'm in Encompass, logged into Encompass, I can go to my pipeline and I could bring up the loan that I just did. In my pipeline, here it is. You know, if I didn't have, of course, I just searched for this loan, so it came up. But I'm going to go directly into that loan. And you will see that it is in lock request status, just like in 1.0. That nothing changes here in the Encompass environment. Of course, it writes to the secondary registration just like it did in 1.0. Once I approve it, I'll go into secondary registration and show you how that is not changed. So I'll go into product and pricing. I'll choose LoanNEX. So now when you access the loan, no more is that red line that was there that would show that it was in lock request status. You actually are in a much cleaner view. You get that same transaction summary. You also get to view the input details if you want to review them, the pricing evidence, the eligibility, all that is available to you as well as the lock desk user. You have the ability to approve, deny the lock, or you can actually go in there and run the scenario as the seller did if you want to look at it that way. We default to, you'll notice there's this button right here on the right that says loan version. We default to pulling the data out of the loan file. That's why the income doc type is not complete, the DTI and the month reserves are not there. But if you go to this loan version and say, what was requested, then it'll complete. This is exactly what the seller put in. The income doc, the DTI, and the month reserves comes into view there. So you have two ways to price this loan, or look at it. You can either look at it on the loan data, which is pulling the loan data directly from the 1003, the loan file, or you could look at what was requested by the seller. I'm going to go ahead and approve this lock by clicking on approve. And once I do, it'll change the status from requested right here to locked. And while it's doing this, it's of course writing into this transaction and process of writing into secondary registration, generating the lock confirmation or the lock ticket as well. So you have easy access to it. And you have access to all that stuff in the activity log also, which is kind of the audit trail that you could look at. Any communication that the seller sent to you, please lock this loan in the comments, are all available in the activity log. So you can periodically check the activity log to see if there's any communication between the seller and you, or you could pick up the lock approved ticket, what was requested, all those things are there. And this file icon kind of across the board in LoanNEX will mean that you could download this particular file, which is in this case, the lock confirmation or the lock ticket. You can also pick it up right here by going to the lock ticket, or just like in how 1.0 behaved, we also put the lock confirmation or the lock ticket into the E folder for you. Now you'll see that this is now approved to 45-day lock, and it's locked. And if I go into the E folder, the lock confirmation is here for me to access as well. Just like well, 1.0 behaved. So if you guys are in Encompass, you guys already know this. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys get to see that. Okay, so everything's locked here. Let's see if I want to go into secondary registration, what was written there. Pull that up. Give me just a second. The first time it pulls up, it takes a second here. And it's on my other monitor. So I'm going to drag it over here so you guys can see. This is the lock request. This is the lock approved. And of course, all the LLPAs, final rate and price, all that gets written in here into the secondary registration. Okay, so now this loan is locked. I'm going to go back into as a seller into TPOC and submit a modification. This is a little bit different than what we've had in the past. So I'm going to get out of this loan and show you how we do a modification. So let's go back into TPOC. I'm going to bring up my file that I want to modify as a seller. Okay, so here's a loan that I previously locked. Here's my loan summary. I locked it at 7.25, but something has changed. There's some circumstances have changed, and I need to submit a modification. So I'm in as the seller in TPOC, and I need to submit a modification. So I come over here. I have two options: modification and extension. Of course, the seller also has access to the lock confirmation. Our system emails the seller the lock confirmation once it's approved, so they'll get it in email. But if they need to, they lose the email or delete the email or something, they lose the lock confirmation, they can always come back here and pick it up here. And they also have access to the activity log and can pick it up there as well. So I'm going to submit a modification now. I click on modification. It brings me to the next app. And let's say my LTV has changed to 72 and I'm going to actually, what was approved. I'm going to change this to 72 and my DTI change. Now it's 40 and my month reserves are actually 13. And that's it. Those are the data, the items that changed, and I can go in and get price on that. And it'll bring up just like in the lock request, it brings up the programs and prices that are available to them. Now, in 1.0, you'll remember that modification was a little bit clunky. They couldn't just get price. They would have to make the changes here and then actually in text fields put in what program, what product, and what rate and price that they wanted, and they'd have to look at the rate sheet to do that. We've eliminated all of that complexity and clunkiness in 1.0. So now, just like a lock request, they can come in and price the modification, select modify to this rate and price. They could select this, or I'm actually going to do this. I'm going to modify it to the silver program. Before I do this, let me kind of cover a couple of things. In this case, we're showing all the programs that are available to them. We also have a feature that's available where we could do a program lockdown. So once they have locked it at a certain program, and if you don't want them to see other programs because that's what they're approved for, we can actually lock down the programs that they see in when they do a modification. I'm not going to demonstrate that component of the system today, but if that type of workflow or that feature is interesting to you and you want to do that in your environment, we can certainly support that and get on a call with you on a private call and set that up for you. So I'm going to go ahead and modify it to this. And now my modification has been requested in the system. I'm also going to go into another loan that I have and request an extension. So I could just do that all here. So I'm going to go into my pipeline. I'm going to go into a previous loan that I've done. And I want to request an extension. So I'm going to go into product and pricing. And this one again has been approved. I'm going to request an extension for an additional 10 days. And by the way, you could set up your extension schedule in your primary account. I'm going to show you how to do that as well in this demo. So put in the 10-day extension. It does the price adjustment, whatever price adjustment that you have for 10 days. It puts it in there, and now I can request the extension. And now this file is in extension requested status. Now I'm going to get out of this and go back in as the lock desk in Encompass and pull up my modification file. Let's see, 51772. And by the way, when the modification is requested, you or your lock desk will get a notification that, hey, this file has been requested for modification. So you know exactly what file that you need to access when you come into Encompass. That notification will go out to you and whoever you want in your lock desk, or if you have a lock desk at xylending.com, we could send it to a kind of a single email address as well. So I'm going to access this loan and then go back into LoanNEX. And now you'll see that it is in modification request status. You have what was approved here, the original lock approval, the modification requested. Now you can go back and forth and look what was changed between what was lock approved and what was modification requested, or what or in the modification. We made that easy for you as well. You can come over here and click on this button, view changes, and it will actually bring up, hey, this is what changed. They locked at a 30-year fix. They changed to a 30-year IO. They locked at a 7.25. This is the change in the rate. This is the change in the price, the change in the first lien amount. You get to see what changed from the original lock to what changed in the modification request. So just an easy way for you guys to look at the modification data. Of course, it hit your rate sheet, so you can approve this, you can deny the modification, or you can go in there just like you did before and run the pricing yourself if you want to look at it. You'll notice if you when you run pricing, you have these options available here where you can, it kind of anchors to the lock request date, so it always shows the rate sheet from the lock request date, but you could move it to the lock approved date. You could look at live pricing, or if you want to go to a historical rate sheet, you can click on historical and go back and say, I want to look at, what it was on the October 23rd rate sheet. And you could set that historical date and it will price it against that historical date. So I'm going to go ahead and do it on well, I'm not going to run the scenario. A couple of things about the loan version. You'll see there's two here. One is it always defaults to pulling the data out of the LOS. So if you made changes and updated the DTI and updated the LTV in the LOS, then that is what it defaults to and pulls that data. They can look at what was previously approved, and they could look at what was requested. So in the modification request. So you have a few options of data that you could toggle between to look at what was previously approved and run the scenario there if you want to, or what's requested in the modification request. You could toggle between those different data points: the LOS data, the modification request data, and the lock approved data. I'm going to go ahead and approve this modification. And once I do, of course, it will move it to lock approved status, and the modification tab will disappear. So once I do here, let me see. It's writing into secondary. So of course, it's updating secondary registration. It's creating a new lock confirmation. It's sending that lock confirmation to your seller and dropping the new lock confirmation in your e-folder as well. Okay, so now I've approved this modification. You'll notice I have a couple of new buttons here. You can cancel this lock altogether, or let's say you want to void that last transaction. Let's say it happens. I see it happen a lot in extensions where somebody will request a 10-day extension, but what they really wanted was a 15-day extension, and somebody will approve the 10-day extension, and now they need to void that last action. So you have the ability now to void that last action. So if I want to void that modification, I can simply click on void, and it will void out the modification and set it back to what was originally approved, and do all the things that the system does, which is kick out a new lock confirmation, now that it's voided, update the lock confirmation in the e-folder, update the information in the secondary registration. All that stuff will happen if you void the last transaction, the last action. You also have this lock actions button here, and the lock actions gives you a few options here that I want to review with you. One, you can edit the lock details. So let's say borrower's name was Jackson instead of Jack, or the property address is was not correct in the loan file. You need to update that. You can do all that here. You could put in a loan number, universal loan identifier. You could put all that information here and update that information for the lock. That's one thing that lock actions gives you. Lock overrides is different, a little interesting. You can actually go and backdate this lock. So if I say, oh, you know what, this loan is actually supposed to be, I didn't approve it until the 6th, but it's supposed to be locked on the 4th. Then you can override your lock approve date, and it will automatically, based on the lock period, it will automatically adjust the lock approve date and the lock expiration date accordingly. So you have those overrides. You also have the override, an override where you can say, you know what, for this seller, I told them that we were going to honor the October 23rd rate sheet, and I want to set it so if they price anything or if they submit a modification again, it's tied to that rate sheet. You can actually do a price override and say, I want to tie to that October 23rd rate sheet, and I want to make sure I give them a max price of 103. And you could do those overrides in the system if you have negotiated something with your seller and want to create these overrides. Now, if a seller goes in and prices this loan, if I save this, it'll automatically price it against the October 23rd rate sheet, not the November 6th rate sheet. So you have those override capabilities in the lock overrides. You also have the ability to put in add-ons. So let's say you want to give a seller a concession and a price adjustment, 125. You could put that in there. Let's say you grant an exception for something. You can keep on adding new pieces in here. And let's say I put in an exception. This exception was for minus for DTI exception. You could put this in here. I could put it in the add to add the lock add-ons, and what this will do is put them into the pricing evidence. So now when I go into, let's say I need to adjust the pricing based on this, I could go in and say, okay, I need to last approved data. Let's see. And I could price this. And now I have, let's see, I want to do it on the first lien 7. Okay. So now I can go in and price this and say, okay, I modified it to this, want to modify it to this program and this rate. And if I look at the pricing evidence now, you'll see that the concession is in here and the exception is in the pricing evidence. So even in the lock confirmation, if I approve this at this price, approve and modify, it'll kick out a new lock confirmation to the seller, and it will have all the pricing evidence and the adjustments that you put in there for the concessions and the exception right in there. So the add-on is a new feature, but you could do it in 1.0. We just made it a little bit cleaner and easier for you as a LockDesk user to access and do this. Remember, once you put in the add-ons, you have to go into the buy-side pricing, price it, and then approve and modify, or it'll just kind of hang out there until somebody prices that loan and somebody submits a modification. Those adjustments will not apply until it's priced and then approved for modification. So just keep that in mind if you do put in add-ons. If you need to take away add-ons, you can actually go into the add-ons and remove them. You want to take this concession out, you could remove it. But if you remove something from here, again, you'll have to go into the buy-side pricing, price it, and approve it with there so it's reflected in the lock confirmation. Okay, last thing here is manual lock. We wanted to give kind of an overarching feature that where you can just, let's say you agree to a final rate and price and with the seller, and you just want to manually lock it or manually adjust it or lock it here. So you can go into manual lock And then you could pick the program, there's a gold program, it's the alt doc program, and it's the 30-year fixed. And it was a 45-day lock period or 30-day lock period. And I could actually, doing this manual lock, just like I could in the add-ons, I can actually tie it to a specific rate sheet if I want to, or I could just put in the final rate and price that I agreed to with the seller, 7.5 at 102.5. And approve and modify. Again, this will do the same thing. It'll generate a new lock confirmation, update the data in the secondary registration, and create a manual lock or let you do that manual lock to your seller. Of course, all the lock confirmations will be in your E folder as well. So that's manual lock. Those are those features there. Now let's go in and approve that extension that I submitted. And I'm also going to void the last transaction so you guys can see how that works. Now you see this is updated and all the old lock, new lock, modifications, the newest lock is all there. Okay, let me go into the file that we submitted for extension. Okay, here it is. Of course, our system will send you a notification for any extensions that were requested. So you will get a email notification letting you know which file was requested for extension. Once you get there, very similar, you have the extension requested tab, you have the buy side tab if you want to price it, you have what was approved. You can, of course, view any changes. Now requested the expiration date to be December 1st with the 10 days, so you could see that in the view changes, and then you could simply approve it. And once you approve it, of course, it'll change the lock expiration date to 12/1. It writes it all. It's writing it into Encompass as well as we're doing this, and it generates a new lock confirmation to send out to the seller as well. And of course, drops it into your E folder. So now I've approved this extension, but let's say the seller calls me like, oh no, I didn't need a 10-day extension. Of course, you'll see here that there's 10-day extension that was requested, and you have one extension so far that has been requested for this particular file. So we keep all that in the transaction summary right here, so it's easy for you. And of course, all the input details for the scenario fields are all here, pricing evidence, eligibility evidence. All those custom, if you remember, I told you about those custom fields that could be added to the request lock pop-up. They are also here. So if you have a number of custom fields and you want to see how they were answered or what data was put in them, you can simply open up the input details and it will be in here in this additional info section. Okay, so now I'm talking to the seller, and the seller's like, I didn't need a 10-day extension, I needed a 15-day. So I can go in there and I'm going to void this. And when I void it, you'll notice this will void out this part of the transaction and set my expiration date back to what it was before. And of course, it generates a new lock confirmation, all that. So you can void out that transaction. You'll see the extension days are gone. It's set back to 11/21. And then you can go in there and put 15-day extension for that seller if you want to. You could have gone in and just added another 5 days, but then it would count against your extension policy. So if you only allow a max number of extensions, 3, and I'll show that when we go into the secondary settings, if you only allow a max number of extensions of 3, then it'll count against that that max amount that you have. So easiest way is to void it, put in 15 days, approve the extension. It calculates everything updates the lock confirmation, sends out another one, and updates the lock confirmation in the e-folder as well. So all those things are there, and that kind of concludes what I wanted to show you in the Encompass environment and in TPOC. As you see, not much has changed from the seller point of view. They still have, the same Next app. They have that new loan type field. The escrows have moved up. I think that was in 1.0 as well. And the temporary buy down, drop down, if you offer those programs, are there as well. So not much has changed for the seller. Shouldn't be disruptive to them at all. We've sent your marketing teams some branded flyers that you can send out to your sellers, which have embedded video links in them, where I'm doing the same type of kind of explanation for your sellers. We've launched this with a number of clients. We haven't had any support come in from any of the sellers, so it's still very intuitive for them, still easy for them to use. On the lock desk side, we think it's very intuitive as well. If you have any questions, we'll answer them here in the Q&A section. Okay, so now that we're done here, let me show you some lock secondary settings that you can set for your lock desk. So I'm going to bring up my my LoanNEX account. Now these changes, your settings happen in your primary account. So your account that you go into when you test loan programs, your standalone environment, that's where you will go in to update these secondary settings. So I'm going to sign in to a demo account, but this is just like your account. And then I'm going to go to my client admin. And I'm going to go to, on the left-hand side, secondary setup, and choose lock desk. So a couple of interesting things that you could do here. You can actually set when your lock expires. So let me give you an example. Let's say you have a 30-day lock for a customer, but that 30-day it falls on a Sunday. The 30th day falls on a Sunday. You can actually say, hey, we want to start the lock from the date the lock was the rate is locked, and then we want it to expire if it falls on a day that our lock desk is closed. We want it to expire on the next business day. So you could set those settings here. You can actually put a time in and say, hey, we want to have it expire at noon Pacific time, whatever time zone your company's in, you will have access to that. You can also set your lock desk hours. So if you say, hey, we're closed on Saturday and Sunday, and we want to let the seller know that if they come into TPOC on a Saturday or Sunday and try to lock a loan, that they can't, that they can't lock it. And you could actually display a custom message to them. Thank you for your business, but our lock desk is closed on the weekends. Please come back the next business day. Okay, to submit your lock. And this message will be displayed to the seller if they try to come in on the weekend and try to submit a lock, and you don't want to allow them to do that. You could also set your operational hours. So you could say, okay, we're open from 6 a.m. Pacific to 7 p.m. You could do that and set your lock desk hours in there as well. And anytime somebody falls out of these lock desk hours and tries to lock or submit some modification or extension, they would get a message displayed to them. You can also go in and put in your the holidays that you observe. So if you observe Christmas or 4th of July or Hanukkah or whatever it is that your company observes and you guys are off, you can go in there and put in your lock calendar settings as well. I'm not going to show you much about auto lock, but I will kind of just go into this and let you know what's happening here. Auto lock is an automation process where if somebody submits a lock request and it hits your rate sheet, you can automatically approve it. These features are not available in Encompass at this moment. We are working on making these features available for in Encompass, so you can, auto approve locks, auto approve modifications, auto approve relocks or extensions. They're just not available in Encompass at this time. So if you go into your secondary settings, don't go into auto lock and turn any of these on. It won't do anything for you at the moment. But the setting is coming soon. So if I set my lock test hours, I did all this, I could then save it, and it'll immediately save these settings and then make them kind of your policy, your lock test policy. You could also do the same thing for extensions. So if you want to set up extension policies like, hey, max number of cumulative extension period is 30 days, or max number of extensions allowed is 3, minimum waiting period until you could request an extension. You have to wait at least 15 days from the initial lock to request an extension. And extensions are subject to lock test hours. You can actually click that and it'll be subject to it. And then for each of these pieces right here, you can actually create a custom message. So if they exceed 30 days locks, you can give them a custom message. Hey, you've exceeded your max number of days that you can request extension. Or if they go beyond three total extensions, you can display a custom message to them right on their screen. So really neat stuff here in setting up your policy. Your relock policy is the same way. Whatever your relock policy is, you can set that up here. Whether it's worst case pricing or max number of relocks allowed, or if there's an adjustment, you could do that. And then of course you have the custom messaging for your relocks as well. Before you set this up, your lock test hours and your lock extensions is fine. Contact our support when you're setting up your relock things. There's some nuances there that we need to work with on the Encompass side. So contact us at support before you set up your relock policy in LoanNEX. There are a couple of other things here that I wanted to talk about that I could show you. This is the lockdown rules that I was talking about earlier, where you could lock down the program at a status or an Encompass milestone. We will work with your Encompass admins to set this up if you guys want to do this. But this is something that is better done with your Encompass admins. So let us know if you want this, or let your Encompass admin know, and they'll reach out to James, and James can help them set this up. Also, if you want to set up your extension adjustments, days and adjustments, you can go to manage pricing, and you'll see extension right here. And you can go in and set up your extension days and your extension price adjustments. And this is just like a built-in Excel table in here. And you can just tab through here, 5 days, this is the adjustment, 10 days, this is the adjustment. If you haven't done that already and you want to start using our extensions in LoanNEX, you could set it up right here. If you need help with that, of course, our support team will help you with that as well and set it up for you. Just reach out to us and let us know. One last thing that I want to cover. All of this is this training, all the videos that we've recorded thus far, any document that we offer for training manuals or setup manuals are all in the resource center. So you'll see that right from this drop down here, I can access our resource center. It brings you to the resource center. So if you want to see, you want to look at the information about the qualifier or the lock settings that we're talking about, or Encompass integration and Encompass integration user guide, all of that is available right here. You can go to these resources. You'll see it's very nicely set up. So if broker user guide, or loan officer user guide, buyer roles and permissions, all of these manuals are here for you to download and to look at. And any videos that we've recorded on loan officer training or seller training are all available here as well.